Now, do you believe us that the gaming crash is real? Take a look at this. Nintendo, One Piece, and Naruto games canceled as Bandai Namco cuts staff. It's even crossed the Pacific now. Take a look at this, okay? We're going to scroll down and take a look at the story. It says Bandai Namco has become the first of the Japanese game publishers to lay off developers this year, although their approach is different to Western companies. We'll get into that in a little bit here. But check out this statistic right here. Check out these numbers. It says, we're still not at the end of the year, and already over 13,000 people have lost their jobs in the video game industry in 2024. Now, this is mostly here in the US. I believe it's just the US. It could be some Canada too. But this is the US. And so that's just 2024. I want to remind you that over 21,000 game developers have lost their jobs in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, okay? That's how big this crash is. It's compounded now over into Japan, okay? Take a look, all right? Here we go. Over 13,000 people have lost their jobs here in the West. Now, the reasons for this are many and complicated, but the simplest explanation is that companies hired too many people during the pandemic and recklessly convinced investors that the increase in sales during a lockdown would continue forever. Now, you and I both know it also has to do with narrative development companies, and of course, Bandai and Namco announcing recently they were going to embrace these types of narrative companies, ruining stories in games, characters in games, sequels, any type of nostalgia has been spoiled, this sort of thing. These made for modern audience attitudes came with hiring all these people. So, what a surprise that it started to collapse, even all the way over in the Pacific, all the way over in Japan. So, let's check it out. The problem is not that publishers are suddenly losing money, but merely that their businesses are not showing enough growth. And the simplest short-term solution for that is to lay off staff and increase the profits. That's exactly as short-sighted as it seems, but because Japanese companies don't put this emphasis on infinite growth, don't put the same emphasis on infinite growth, they have been immune from the same problems until now. And likewise, we'll get into how these companies hire and fire, but I want to get into what actually happened with the games. So we'll scroll down through this and we'll read about this situation. The news about all these layoffs, the trouble with Bandai Namco, comes as a surprise after the success of Elden Ring and this month's Dragon Ball Sparking Zero that sold 3 million copies. That's right, 3 million copies in the first 24 hours. That is amazing. That's perfectly in keeping with the actions of Western publishers such as GTA, Take-Two, who laid off more than 500 staff despite making over 2.2 billion in profit. What do, right? What do? They make all this money and then they're like, thanks for all your help, bye. Increasingly, it is mobile and online titles that are described as being the biggest problems, with Bandai closing titles such as Blue Protocol, Tales of the Ray, and resulting in a billion yen, that's 108 million write-down. Square Enix, despite no massive layoffs, has previously been the only Japanese publisher suffering in a similar manner to the Western companies, and has also closed down a number of mobile titles recently. Even more so in the West, smartphones are the predominant format in Japan, but recently there's been signs that the mobile market has peaked worldwide, coinciding with a string of failures with live service games. That's our favorite word this year, right? Live service. All right, that's the new, oops, maybe it's not, because take a look at what happened to Concord. It's not a magic word that just makes it rain money. How about that? Who would have ever have guessed? But here's the big thing, I highlighted it here so I wouldn't miss it. So this is the big thing, and here it reads, this is believed to be a result of oversaturation. Wow! And the fact that people simply don't have time to play dozens of live service style games. Wow! That constantly demand your attention. Wow! I feel like I need that anime girl wow sound effect. This is going to get old real quick. Nevertheless, it seems as if the canceled projects at Namco-Bandai are primarily for console video games, although the report is vague in its description of games that would have featured characters from Naruto and One Piece. So you just heard that right. Finally, after all this, That's what actually happened. These two hot properties, like, I don't know, Naruto's always going to be a hot property. It's like Dragon Ball, it's going to go on forever. And we're just, and Naruto too, I just want to direct your attention, like, excuse me, to One Piece rather, to One Piece. That is still going. It's a huge property. It's increasing its influence as it spreads more into the United States, thanks to the weakness we have of the media of our own here. And ta-da, here we are. They're canceling Naruto and One Piece games. Like, I don't know what could be possibly wrong with these games that you would want to, like, ice them. I don't know. But anyway, however, another reportedly canceled project is one that was commissioned by Nintendo, which would certainly have been a console title, by the way. It's unclear if the game, what the game was precisely, but Bandai Namco has collaborated with Nintendo in the past over the years on projects ranging from Star Fox Assault to Super Smash Bros. So this isn't a new team up. It just strikes me as odd that Nintendo would pull out of a project with them too. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things, I guess. You got to have like a different mindset about it. We as consumers, we're like, wow, that would be really cool. But when you're inside the guts of the business, I guess it's not, eventually it just reaches like a terminal hotness and it's not going to get any more hot for them. So they, ice it. Do you like all these temperature metaphors? I don't know. Let me know down below if you feel hot or cold about these things. Whether these de facto layoffs are the start of a new trend in Japan or just one-off is unknown. And the reality is they're not quite layoffs. See, in Japan, they have these things called, these are expulsion rooms, okay? And so, as it reads here from Mint, since April, Bandai Namco Studios, an affiliate of the company, has also relocated about 200 people of its 1,300 employees, right, to these so-called expulsion rooms. And so the way that these rooms usually work is that when a project is over with, or perhaps an employee is, I wouldn't say no longer useful to the company, or for whatever reason, this group of employees have fallen out of their use to the company. It's just no other way to say it. And so rather than just giving them a pink slip and telling them to clean out their desk, Bandai Namco instead says to them, hang out here, okay? Hang out in this place. And so what they do is they find a new job while they're just basically in a rubber room, if you like the term. They're just there. They don't do anything in there. There's no assignment per se to be doing in there. And it's basically made clear to you that it's time for you to go, And so it doesn't look good to stay in these positions. You'll read about a lot of these people like rapidly quitting their jobs and moving on. And the reality is that the Japanese businessman, as you will, is upwardly motivated, right? He doesn't want to find a job and stay secure forever. It's just not. It's characterized like that in anime because it's an easier way to like explain the father's absence and stuff like that, that he's just trying to maintain his job and he's super busy. But the reality is that the only way you move up in Japanese business culture is if you're just right, like head into the wind, shoulder to the wheel, if you are constantly pushing for that promotion. There is no like put your feet up and take it easy point. Not even the bosses get to do that. So it's one of those things where the Japanese business culture itself is changing a lot, so this attracts some kind of attention because we as Westerners are not used to this type of behavior, but it is actually quite a merciful thing when you get down to it because, believe it or not, quitting your job in Japan isn't necessarily a bad thing when they review where you came from. So when they review your application, you state that your last position with Bandai Namco was in what amounts to an expulsion room. It could be whatever department that is at Namco, and because whoever you're headed to is familiar with that terminology, they understand that you were put in there, you were not told to get the hell out, you were not told to clean out your desk, you had not violated the company's orders, just for whatever reason, your use with the company had ended. And so you had applied for this new job, and because you didn't spend months and years inside of this rubber room situation, just collecting a paycheck every day, they instead see this upward momentum, this sort of forward thinking with you. You're motivated, ambitious, ready to climb the ladder. So they'll hire you. And in a way, this is more merciful than just cutting off someone's income line and just letting them go. But this requires a culture that embodies these things. That's why it won't work here in the US, because a lot of people have the mentality that they get a paycheck. Why should they challenge that? And again, it's just a different thing on the cultural level. Is every single person in Japan obsessed with becoming the CEO? No, that's not the case. But every single person in Japan, when they take on a job, does not dream of staying there forever. And I argue to you that every person in the United States, every country that you're watching this in, does not dream of this either. And the only reason that separates us from the Japanese and why we can't enjoy this kind of business culture that they have, now granted, it's not great, but this particular feature anyway, why we can't have that here is because a lot of people in our cultures don't believe in pushing forward. It's just what happens. People get burnt out. They just never arrive at the conclusion that they should have ambition, that their heart should burn brighter than the sun. And they just don't, for whatever reason, don't arrive like that. You know, these attitudes in anime don't just fall out of the sky. These attitudes about being the best, proving you're the best, becoming the tippity top, the exemplary human being, the ultimate life form, you know, that kind of thing. That thinking doesn't just fall out of the sky. That's in Japan. That's why you end up with like all of these rival schools that have like these horrible like blood feuds between each other and stuff like that over crazy things like gunpla models and soccer and all this crazy stuff that ordinarily Western people would not be so invested in. But because Japanese culture asks you, or rather marinates you in the knowledge that you must move forward always. You must bring honor to your family. You must go at least one step further than your father. You know, and it's hard to kind of build this knowledge that when you're put in this room, you have to leave. Whereas most people, I know quite a few of them that would just kick up their heels and say, hey man, they're paying me 40 grand to sit here and make paper planes all day. That's what I do now. And that's what people would do, rather than challenging themselves to go out and get a job that pushed them further in their career than what Bandai and Namco capped them at. And that's, I don't know, it's a big question, right? So when we consider losing these games, consider that the people behind them losing their jobs weren't necessarily bad at what they did, is what the roundabout that I'm getting to is. Don't think that these people are bad at their job, or they turned out a bad One Piece game or a bad Naruto game, or offended Nintendo so much they never wanted to work with them again. That's not the case at all. The reality is that the game market became too saturated, and odds are the future plans for these titles, right, these Naruto and One Piece titles, are now being reshaped to compensate for that. Perhaps the work already done is being poured into a larger project to make a more successful offering that maybe mirrors what happened with Sparking Zero. I don't know. You have to understand, these corporations tend to put 10-year plans ahead, but when some smash success happens, we've seen it. They've completely reshaped their structure around it. So look what happened with Concord. That wasn't even a success. That was just a bunch of people gaslighting themselves in a closet. And that's just, you know, that's what you're dealing with now, is live service has fallen through. A lot of the internet-based games are being rejected by players who just want to sit down and have an experience of start to finish and not have to deal with a bajillion online things. Corporations assumed that this live service thing was going to last forever, that people getting introduced to gaming through the pandemic were never going to leave it, and certainly never downsize their consumption rate. I don't know. You'll have to let me know how you feel about this down in the comments below. And as always, just let me know what you think about the whole hiring thing. You know, I'm curious about what you think. Do you think the United States, particularly how our business culture works, do you think we could eventually arrive at a place where people can be put into an expulsion room and have the self-responsibility to go find a new job instead of just kicking their heels up? I don't know. I think we're just out of touch with how these things work, but prove me wrong down in the comments below. What have you seen in the corporate world that gives you hope for the future? And as always, guys, good luck out there.